Julian, afraid I would hurt his white moonlight, colluded with my parents to exile me to a remote village. 3 years passed. For 3 years, I was left unheard and unasked after. 3 years later he finally remembered his ex-girlfriend, driving to the countryside, his face bearing an air of condescension. "Pack your things. I've come to take you back." I stood before the dilapidated courtyard gate, backlit, cradling a swaddled infant securely in my arms. The baby inside, just a month old, was gurgling softly. Julian finally noticed the child in my arms, his brow furrowing. "Maya, whose child is this?" I met his gaze. "Mine." He looked as if he'd heard a joke, his face full of disbelief, a sneer playing at the corners of his lips. "Yours? What trick are you playing now? Trying to pin some bastard child on me?" Hearing him call my child a bastard, my brow tightened. "Julian, he's not a bastard. He's my child." His face instantly darkened. He strode over, reaching out to pull back the swaddling clothes. I dodged aside, his hand falling empty. Julian withdrew his hand, anger brewing in his eyes. "Maya, you'd better explain yourself." I looked up, meeting his face, twisted slightly with anger, and said with a touch of mockery, "Explain what? Explain why I have a child? Or explain your 3 years of ignoring me?" Julian reacted as if his tail had been stepped on. "Ignoring you? You were the one who acted inappropriately in the first place. Serena and your aunt and uncle were only looking out for you. That's why they sent you here to calm down. Are you blaming me now? Acted inappropriately, looking out for me, calming down." Such familiar phrases. 3 years ago, Serena cried, saying I had pushed her down the stairs, almost killing her. Although she later clarified that she had accidentally fallen herself, the seed of doubt had already been planted. Julian initially believed me, arguing with Serena for my sake. But later, the way he looked at Serena became increasingly complex. He began to say I had become sharp-tongued and inconsiderate. Then he sided with my parents, saying I needed to calm down, ignoring my cries and explanations, forcibly sending me to this remote mountain village. A sending that lasted 3 years. No phone calls, no letters, no contact of any kind. As if I, as a person, had never existed in their lives. I hugged the child and said softly, "I don't blame you. I don't blame anyone. Because none of you are worth me wasting another ounce of emotion on." Julian stared at the child in my arms, anger blazing in his eyes. "You say this is your child. Where's the proof? Maya, you're a habitual liar. How do I know this isn't just a trick to force me to take you back?" I couldn't be bothered to explain. "Believe it or not, as you like. The child is mine, and that's enough." Julian suddenly grabbed my wrist, his eyes filled with rage. "Tell me, is it some country bumpkins? You've only been here 3 years, and you couldn't bear the loneliness?" I gasped in pain. The child in my arms seemed to sense the tense atmosphere, bursting into a wail. "You're hurting me, Julian." I tried to shake off his hand, but to no avail. He sneered. "Hurting? Maya, when you put a green hat on my head, did you ever think about whether I would hurt?" "A green hat?" I almost wanted to laugh. "Julian, we broke up a long time ago. When you left me here 3 years ago, without so much as a word, that's when we ended." Julian seemed to be provoked by the word ended. "I didn't say it was over. Who gave you permission to end it?" He flung my wrist away, pointing at the crying child. "Get rid of this illegitimate child from who knows where. I can pretend nothing happened and take you back." Get rid of him? My heart felt like it had been hit by a frozen rock, cold and painful. Say that again? Utter rage enveloped me. Give him away, or send him to an orphanage. Julian's tone carried a hint of barely perceptible impatience. Maya, we can start over. With him, what will it look like? Start over? Looking at his self-righteous face, I suddenly remembered the despair I felt when I was first sent here. For the first few months, I cried almost every day. I kept calling my parents, Julian, but all the numbers were out of service. I was like a piece of trash discarded by the world, left to fend for myself in this unfamiliar place. I almost didn't survive. It was that person's appearance that pulled me out of the mire. He told me, Maya, you have to learn to love yourself first, then others might love you. He spent the hardest times with me, teaching me how to live in this world. I held the child tightly. This was the crystallization of our love. I took a deep breath. We can't start over, but I can go back with you. There were some things I had to get back, things that Grandma left me. Grandma was the only person in the family who ever genuinely cared about me. Before she died, she left me some jewelry and a jade pendant, which my mother took away in the name of safekeeping. They were the only proof of warmth I had from a family member. Julian acted quickly. The next day, someone came to the door, saying they needed to collect a sample of the child's buccal cells. The person's movements were a little rough, and the child cried uncomfortably. Julian stood to one side, frowning, but said nothing to stop it. Are you satisfied now? I gently patted and soothed the child, without looking up at him. Let's see what the results say. His tone carried a kind of anxiety that he himself probably didn't realize. Maya, if this child isn't yours, you'd better think carefully about how you're going to explain this farce to me. I raised my head and looked at him. What if he is mine? Julian seemed to be stumped by my question. He was silent for a few seconds, then said stiffly, impossible. He refused to believe it, refused to consider the alternative possibility. He seemed to believe that as long as it was proven that the child was related to me, it would confirm my betrayal. The sample was taken away. Waiting for the results would take a few days. The atmosphere in those few days was so oppressive it was suffocating. Julian did not leave this farmhouse, which he clearly despised. He stayed in the vacant room next door, as if to monitor me. Sometimes he would stare blankly at my back as I hummed a song while holding the baby, and sometimes he would become extremely irritable, smoking cigarette after cigarette in the courtyard. One night, the baby was crying in the night, and I got up to make formula. When I walked out of the room, I saw him standing in the dimly lit hall, his figure stretched long by the moonlight. Does he cry like this often? He suddenly spoke, his voice a little hoarse. Yeah, babies do. I replied calmly, expertly warming the bottle with hot water. He was silent for a moment, then said, These 3 years you've been taking care of him alone? No, I answered, then carried the warmed bottle back to the room and closed the door. I could feel his gaze lingering outside the door. Julian went to pick up the test results himself on the day they came out. When he returned, his face was ashen, and he was clutching the report tightly in his hand. He walked up to me and thrust the report in front of my eyes, his voice squeezed out between his teeth. Maya, tell me what is going on. How can this child be yours? Whose is he? The report clearly stated that it supported the conclusion that Maya was the biological mother of the child. I took the report, looked at it carefully, then gently placed it on the table, as if it were just an unimportant piece of paper. I told you a long time ago he's my child. Your child? Then who is the father? Who is that man? He grabbed my shoulders violently. Is it some hooligan from the village? Did he trick you? I quietly watched his somewhat collapsing emotions. He didn't trick me. I looked at him seriously and said, We were together because we were willing to. Willing to. Julian was incredulous. He suddenly released me and staggered back a step. So for these 3 years you've been here, and had a child with another man? Maya, do you even have a heart? We've only been separated for 3 years. Separated. I finally couldn't help but laugh. Julian, the moment you abandoned me here and didn't care about me, we were over. You ended it with your own hands. In these 3 years, did you ever think about calling me, writing me a letter? You didn't. In your heart, I had long become a burden you were eager to get rid of. He was speechless, just staring at me intently, his chest rising and falling violently. No, it's not like that. He murmured, as if trying to convince himself. You're lying, you've changed, become so strange to me, that's why. And Serena, Serena again. Hearing that name, my heart no longer felt any turbulence. Enough. What's the point of saying all this now? Julian sat in the courtyard all night. The next morning, he came to me covered in dew, his eyes filled with fanaticism. His voice was dry. Maya, let's not mention the past, send this child away, to an orphanage with better conditions. We'll go back and get married, as if none of this ever happened. I almost thought I misheard. Send away? Orphanage. Julian, this is my child, a piece of flesh that fell from my body. You want me to send him to an orphanage? Then what do you want me to do? Watch you carry another man's child around in front of me." His sanity collapsed again. He roared, "I can't do it. Maya, I only have you in my heart. We can start over. As long as you send him away, we can go back to the way we were." Go back to the way we were. Back to the way I carefully tried to please him, please his parents, but could never compare to Serena? We can't go back. I looked at him and said clearly, "And I will never abandon my child." "Then you're willing to abandon our feelings of so many years?" he asked, his eyes red. "You were the ones who abandoned me first." I answered softly, but my tone was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. He looked at me, his eyes filled with pain and incomprehension, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. "Maya, how could you become like this?" He finally uttered only that one sentence. To become no longer obedient, no longer centered around him, no longer compromising myself for their approval. Yes, I've changed. It was the solitude of these 3 years, that man's redemption, and this warm little life, that brought me back to life and taught me to love myself. In the end, Julian compromised. Perhaps it was because he realized that I would never leave with him if I didn't take the child. Or perhaps, deep down, he still had a glimmer of hope, believing that as long as I returned to that familiar environment, left this place that had bewitched me, I would wake up and return to his side. He tried to make up for it in his own way. He bought a lot of expensive baby products and clothes, piling them up in the simple room. I made him return them all. He watched me skillfully change the baby's diaper and feed him, his eyes complex. He was silent for a long time before finally speaking. "After we go back, don't tell anyone that this child is yours for now." My hands paused, and I looked at him. He avoided my gaze, his voice a little stiff. "Just say it's an orphan you adopted in the countryside, that way it's better for everyone, so as not to hurt you with gossip." He said it so eloquently, but I understood that he was afraid of losing face, afraid that people would know that Julian picked up a woman with a burden. I smiled indifferently. "Whatever you want. I don't care what they think of me. I'm going back just to get back what's mine." On the day of leaving, Auntie Wong next door secretly stuffed me with a bag of sweet potato slices she had dried herself, and whispered, "Maya, if you don't feel comfortable over there, come back, the people Reed arranged are still there." Reed. Hearing that name, my heart settled for a moment. I nodded. "Thank you, Auntie Wong, I know." Julian frowned slightly as he watched us whisper, but didn't ask any further. He probably will never understand how much warmth and support these villagers, in his eyes, gave me in these 3 years. I held the child and got into Julian's luxury car that was out of place in this village. The car started and gradually drove away from the place where I had lived for 3 years. I felt a little reluctant, but I knew that after 3 years it was time for me to leave. Some things are mine, and I will always take them back. Julian's car drove into the city. The tall buildings outside the window were familiar and unfamiliar. After 3 years, the city had become more prosperous. The car finally stopped in front of my family's villa. Julian got out of the car first. He straightened his suit and regained that noble and calm look, as if the man who had lost control and collapsed in the countryside was just my illusion. He looked at me holding the child, his brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. "Remember what I said, this child is adopted." I didn't respond, and got out of the car with the child in my arms. Pushing open the heavy carved iron gate, the scene in the living room came into view. My parents and Serena were sitting on the sofa, drinking tea happily. When they saw me coming in, the smiles on their faces froze instantly. My mother reacted first. She put down her teacup and walked over quickly, her tone filled with exaggerated surprise. "Maya, is that really you? You're finally back." Her gaze fell on the swaddling clothes in my arms, her movement stopped, and the smile froze on her face. "This? Whose child is this?" My father also walked over, his face darkening. Serena followed behind them. Her gaze swept between me and Julian, and finally landed on the child in my arms. A hint of surprise flashed in her eyes, followed by a look of concern. "Sister, you're back? This child is..." Julian stepped forward, stood in front of me, and said in a calm tone, "Uncle and Auntie, this is an orphan Maya adopted in the countryside." She saw that he was pitiful and brought him back. "Adopted?" My mother's voice rose, filled with disbelief. "Maya, are you crazy? You actually adopted a child of unknown origin. My father also said sternly, "Nonsense. Send this child away immediately. Our Song family cannot keep a child of unknown origin." Looking at their terrified appearance, my heart was ice cold. This is my family. After 3 years, there was not a single word of concern or greeting, only accusations and disgust. I held my child tightly. His existence was my only warmth. "Please return what Grandma left me." I directly stated the purpose of my return. My mother was stunned for a moment, and then anger appeared on her face. "You only think about your grandma's things as soon as you come back? We raised you for so long. Are we not as good as some dead objects?" Serena gently pulled on my mother's arm and softly persuaded, "Mom, don't be angry, sister just came back. Maybe she just misses Grandma too much." She looked at me, her eyes filled with pity. "Sister, Mom is keeping Grandma's things safe and sound. Nothing will be missing. Just settle in first. Since you've brought the child back, we can discuss it slowly. There will always be a solution." She was always like this, so understanding, effortlessly driving a deeper wedge between me and my parents. Julian glanced at me and said to my parents, "Uncle and Auntie, Maya just got back. Let her rest first. We can talk about the child later." He seemed to be helping me out, but that condescending attitude disgusted me. I was assigned to my old room. The room was still neat, but it had a desolate, uninhabited air. I sat on the bed, gently patting the child to sleep. A hushed argument came from outside the door. It was my mother and Julian. "Julian, how could you let her bring the child back? What does this look like?" "Auntie, don't worry, the child is just adopted. Maya is soft-hearted." "Soft-hearted? She's deliberately smearing our family. You need to find a way to get rid of this child. I'll talk to her." Their voices faded into the distance. I looked down at the child's sleeping face. My heart was completely calm. Get rid of it. They would never understand. This child is my life. My purpose for coming back was clear. To retrieve Grandma's belongings, and then leave. As for anything else, I don't care. Dinner was tense. At the long dining table, my parents sat at the head, Julian and I sat on one side, and Serena sat on the other. The child was temporarily sleeping in the room upstairs. My father ate in silence, while my mother constantly scrutinized me with critical eyes. Serena thoughtfully served my parents food, telling amusing stories, trying to liven up the atmosphere, but only highlighting my incongruity. "Sister, try this shrimp, it's very fresh." Serena placed a shrimp in my bowl, a harmless smile on her face. "You used to love shrimp the most, remember? When you were little, you cried when you tried to snatch the last shrimp from me." Upon hearing this, my mother frowned and looked at me. I looked at the shrimp in my bowl, without moving. I wasn't the one who loved shrimp the most. It was Serena who liked it, so there was often shrimp on the table. And every time I ate a few more, my mother would stop me with a look. Julian glanced at me and interrupted the delicate atmosphere. "Maya, eat something, you're too thin." He placed a chopstick full of vegetables in my bowl. The smile on Serena's face faded slightly, then returned. "Julian Gidge is still so concerned about sister. Speaking of which, I really miss the old days. Back then, the three of us often played together. Julian Gidge always protected sister. I even got jealous." She rested her chin on her hand. Her eyes filled with nostalgia and a hint of melancholy. "Time flies so fast. It seems like everything has changed, and yet nothing has changed." My mother put down her chopsticks and sighed. "Yes, if Maya was as sensible as Serena, we wouldn't have to worry so much." She looked at me, her tone filled with reproach. "You just left without a word for 3 years, and now you come back with a child. Are you deliberately trying to anger your father and me to death? They were the ones who sent me away, and now they're blaming me for leaving without a word." I put down my chopsticks, looked up, and looked at them. "I'm full." I got up, ready to leave the dining room. "Stop." My father finally spoke, his voice stern. "Sit down. We're having a family meal. Who are you giving that look to?" Julian gently touched my arm under the table and whispered, "Maya, don't anger Uncle." I looked at them, these familiar yet unfamiliar faces. 3 years ago, it was them, working together to push me away. Now they were putting on a victim's act. I have nothing to say. I turned around and went straight upstairs. Behind me came my mother's furious voice. Look at her. Look what she's become. It's all your fault for spoiling her. And Serena's soft consolation. Mom, don't get angry, sister might just be in a bad mood. I closed the door, shutting out everything downstairs. I walked to the crib. The child was sleeping soundly. Only when I looked at him could I feel a sense of peace. I knew that getting Grandma's things back wouldn't be easy, but I had to get them back. Those were the things Grandma left me, the only things that proved I had been truly loved. In the night, the child became fussy, and I held him, gently walking around the room, soothing him. There was a gentle knock on the door. Julian was standing outside the door. He was wearing pajamas, his face showing a hint of fatigue. I heard the child crying, so I came to check. His gaze fell on the child in my arms, his eyes complex. Do you need any help? No. I continued to gently pat the child. He stood at the door, not leaving. After a moment of silence, he spoke, his voice particularly clear in the quiet night. Maya, let's talk. We have nothing to talk about. Just 5 minutes. He insisted. I held the child and walked to the window, turning my back to him. Speak. I know you blame me. He walked behind me. But in these 3 years, I haven't forgotten you. I just needed time to calm down. I looked at the dark night sky outside the window, feeling a little ridiculous. Calm down to the point of blacklisting all my contact information? Calm down to the point of not asking about me for 3 years. He paused. It was Uncle and Auntie's idea. They thought you needed to completely cut off contact with the outside world to think things through. And what about you? Didn't you have any of your own judgment? I turned around and looked at him. You believed everything Serena said? She said I pushed her, and you doubted me? She said I needed to calm down, and you left me in the countryside without a word. A look of embarrassment flashed across Julian's face. I didn't believe her. Didn't she clarify it later? She fell accidentally. But before she clarified, the scales in your heart had already tilted. The way you looked at her, the way you argued with me for her sake, Julian, don't deceive yourself. That's not how it is. He retorted urgently. I admit, I was a little confused at the time, but the person I love is you. It's always been you. The child seemed startled by his voice and stirred uneasily. I lowered my head and gently soothed the child. Love. I raised my head, looking at him, my eyes devoid of any emotion. Your love is sending me away when I needed you most? Is your first reaction to make him disappear when I came back with the child? Julian was speechless, tormented by my questions. Then what should I do? Maya, tell me, what should I do? Seeing you with another man's child tears my heart apart. That's your problem. If you can't accept it, you can leave. No one is forcing you to be here. He suddenly grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. Maya, don't think you can push me away again. Now that I've gotten you back, I won't let go. He was a little frantic. I can try to accept this child, treat him like my own. Let's start over, okay? Try to accept? Treat him like his own. Looking at him, I felt only endless irony. He had no idea what the child and the child's father meant to me. He would never understand that some wounds, once inflicted, cannot be healed. I forcefully shook off his hand. Julian, don't say these ridiculous things anymore. Between us, it ended 3 years ago. The next morning, when I went downstairs, my parents and Serena were already having breakfast. Seeing me, my mother's face was still unpleasant. My father said sternly, "Go to the hospital today and give the child a thorough examination. Our Song family cannot keep a child of unknown origin." I knew they still didn't believe Julian's talk of adoption, and wanted to use medical means to verify the child's parentage. The child is healthy and doesn't need an examination. I refused calmly. That's not up to you. My mother put down her chopsticks. Maya, don't be willful. What if the child has some hereditary disease, or his biological parents come looking for him? It will all be trouble. Serena chimed in softly. Sister, Mom and Dad are doing this for your own good, for the good of the family. A checkup will put everyone at ease. I looked at them. This family that always used the excuse of doing it for my own good to inflict harm on me. It's my child and I decide. My attitude was firm. My father slammed his hand on the table. You're rebelling. Look at the way you are now. Disrespectful, headstrong. Julian came in from outside, having obviously heard the argument. He walked to my side and said to my parents, "Uncle and Aunt, the examination isn't urgent. The child is still young. It's not too late to wait until he's older." My mother glared at Julian. "Julian, why are you helping her be so unreasonable?" Julian patiently explained, "Aunt, I'm not helping her, I just don't think it's necessary to pressure her so much." His protection, in my parents' eyes, was further proof of my willful behavior. The breakfast ended unhappily. I knew that if the child stayed in the Song family, he would only become a target for their attacks on me. I had to get Grandma's things as soon as possible and leave with the child. I found my mother, and directly asked for Grandma's belongings. My mother was arranging flowers and, without looking up, said, "What's the rush? The things aren't going to sprout legs and run away. Those are Grandma's things left to me. I want them now." My tone left no room for argument. My mother finally raised her head, looking at me coldly. "Maya, do you think you've grown wings? Coming back and going against me at every turn? You want your Grandma's things? Fine, get rid of that child first. Our Song family can't afford to lose face like that." My heart completely chilled. As expected, they wouldn't give them to me easily. Grandma's jewelry and the jade pendant, while not priceless, were still quite valuable. My mother clearly didn't want to give them up. I must have Grandma's things. I looked at my mother. "They're mine." My mother scoffed. "Yours? In this family, what truly belongs to you? Even you were raised by us." Those words were like a thorn, piercing deeply into my heart. Yes, in this family I was always superfluous. Serena was their treasure. I turned and left, no longer arguing with her. Since I couldn't get them through direct means, I had to think of another way. I knew my mother habitually kept valuables in the safe in her bedroom. Perhaps I could guess the password. Back in my room, I looked at the child babbling in the crib, and planned my next move in my heart. Brute force wouldn't work. I had to outsmart them. My mother's safe password was likely my father's birthday or Serena's birthday. That night, I waited until late and quietly left my room after the lights in my parents' room went out. The villa was silent. I knew my way around and quietly came to my parents' bedroom door, gently turning the handle. The door wasn't locked. I slipped inside and, using the faint light from the window, found the safe in the corner of the walk-in closet. I squatted down and tried entering my father's birthday. Incorrect password. I then tried Serena's birthday. The safe emitted a soft beep, and the green light illuminated. My heart skipped a beat, followed by an indescribable ache. As expected, in my mother's heart, Serena was the most important. Even the safe password was her birthday. I suppressed my emotions and gently pulled open the safe door. Inside were some jewelry, property deeds, and a few brocade boxes. I quickly found the sandalwood box that Grandma had left behind. Opening the box, I found some antique gold jewelry and the translucent jade pendant. Grandma's voice and smile seemed to be right in front of me. She held my hand and put the box in my hand. "Maya, keep this safe. This is Grandma's dowry for you." My eyes were burning and I quickly closed the box and hugged it tightly. Just as I was about to leave, the light in the walk-in closet suddenly came on. My mother stood at the door, her face ashen, her eyes coldly glaring at me. With her was Serena, wearing pajamas and looking worried. "Maya, how dare you steal things?" My mother's voice was sharp with anger. Serena covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Sister, how could you? How could you do this?" I looked at them. Clearly this was a trap. Perhaps Serena had discovered that I knew the password. Or perhaps they had been waiting for me to walk right into it. This isn't stealing. It's taking back what belongs to me. I calmly held the box. "Your things? Everything in this house is mine. If I don't agree, you won't take a single needle." My mother strode forward, reaching out to grab the box in my arms. I dodged aside. "Mom, have you forgotten what Grandma said before she died? She specifically left this to me." "That's just her senile ramblings." My mother was furious. "You ungrateful wretch. We raised you for nothing. We might as well have raised a dog." Her cruel words cut into my heart like knives. Serena stepped forward and took my mother's arm. "Mom, don't be angry, you'll hurt yourself. Sister might just be confused for a moment." She looked at me, her eyes filled with heartache. Sister, quickly give the thing back to Mom and apologize. Let's pretend this never happened. Watching their mother-daughter affection, I felt only immense irony. I won't give it back. My attitude was firm. Fine. Fine then. My mother pointed at the door. Get out. Get out of this house. Take your bastard child of unknown origin and get out. I looked at my biological mother. I never understood why they didn't love me, even though I was their own daughter. I will leave. I hugged the box, straightened my back, and walked past them. But remember, you are the one who kicked me out today. From now on, I have nothing to do with the Song family. I held my child, carrying my simple luggage, standing on the cold street in the middle of the night. Grandma's wooden box pressed painfully against me, but it also gave me a sliver of strength. Finally, I had retrieved what was rightfully mine, and I had completely severed ties with that so-called family. There was no regret, only relief. I took out my phone and dialed a number I had memorized. The phone only rang once before it was answered, and a deep, familiar voice came from the other end. Maya. It was Reed. Hearing his voice, the strength I had been forcing seemed to crack, and my nose twitched with a slight ache. Reed. Where are you? He immediately heard the abnormality in my voice. I just left the Song family, at the intersection of Zhongshan Road. Don't move, I'll be right there. In less than 10 minutes, a black car quietly stopped in front of me. The car door opened, and a tall figure quickly got out. The moonlight outlined his rugged features. Reed walked quickly to me, his gaze first falling on my face, confirming that I was unharmed, then moving to the child in my arms, his expression instantly softening. He reached out and carefully took the child, his movements practiced and gentle. The child stirred in his arms and continued to sleep soundly. It's okay now. He looked at me, his voice deep and steady, with a power that could soothe people's hearts. Let's go home. Sitting in the warm car, I looked at Reed's profile as he concentrated on driving, and my heart was filled with mixed emotions. 3 years ago, when I was first sent to that remote village, I was almost broken. All my contact information had been cut off, and I was like an abandoned island in the world. It was Reed who shone like a beam of light into my dark and desperate world. He was exhausted from family infighting, and was recuperating in that quiet village. We met under the old locust tree at the entrance of the village. I was looking into the distance and crying when he handed me a clean handkerchief. Later, he taught me how to grow vegetables, taught me self-defense moves, and accompanied me through one difficult night after another. He told me, Maya, people have to learn to love themselves first before others can love you. If others don't love you, then you must love yourself even more. He gradually pulled me out of the abyss of self-doubt and despair. We fell in love and had a child. His identity was special. He was the head of the chief family in this generation. At that time, the family infighting had not completely subsided, and he could not put me in danger, so he could only temporarily settle me and the child in the village and arrange for people to protect us. He promised that when everything was stable, he would bring us home. I chose to come back with Julian just to retrieve my grandmother's belongings and completely sever ties with the past. I didn't expect to be kicked out of the Song family so quickly. I didn't expect Reed to come so quickly either. It seemed he had been waiting for me all along. The car drove steadily into the night. Reed freed one hand and gently placed it on the back of my hand, the warmth of his palm transmitting through my skin. I looked out the window at the rapidly receding scenery. The outline of the Song family villa had long since disappeared, but my heart felt strangely relaxed, as if I had unloaded a burden that I had been carrying for many years. Did you get Grandma's things back? I nodded, holding the sandalwood box even tighter. They're all here. His fingertip tapped lightly on the back of my hand twice, like a silent reassurance. You did a good job. That night we returned to Reed's residence. He had already prepared a nursery and all the necessary supplies. The child slept peacefully in the new environment, and I lay on that unfamiliar bed, feeling for the first time in 3 years that my heart had been properly settled. At first, the Song family didn't take my departure to heart. My mother called the next afternoon, her tone carrying its usual arrogance and impatience. Maya, stop acting up and come home. Get rid of the child, and we can pretend nothing happened. I calmly hung up the phone, and promptly blacklisted the number. Julian's call came next, his voice suppressing a thin anger. Maya, don't be willful. Uncle and Aunt are very worried about you. Tell me where you are and I'll pick you up. No need. I looked out the window. Reed was walking with the child in the garden, the morning sun bathing them in a soft glow. We have nothing more to say to each other. He obviously didn't expect me to be so resolute, and after a moment of stunned silence, his tone softened. Don't say things in anger, let's talk it over properly. I hung up again and added this number to the blacklist as well. The world was finally quiet. Reed never asked too many questions, only providing a solid reliance when I needed it. He arranged for a lawyer to help me with the legal ownership of Grandma's belongings, and hired a professional nanny to help care for the child. He was extremely good to the child, and the heartfelt love couldn't be faked. Even the nanny secretly told me, Mr. Reed holds the baby more correctly than many mothers. The days flowed by peacefully, until a week later, I received a message from an unknown number. It was my father. Maya, come home, your mother's anger has subsided. I deleted the message without replying. They probably thought I was still sulking, as I had many times in the past, and would eventually compromise. But they didn't understand that from the moment they chose to abandon me, the affection between us had been exhausted. Julian began frantically searching for me. He used his connections and even went to the countryside, but naturally he found nothing. Auntie Wang, as instructed by Reed, only said she didn't know. On the 10th day of my disappearance, he finally found a company under Reed's name. Reed was having lunch with me and the child when the receptionist notified him. He slowly and meticulously wiped the corner of his mouth, raised his eyes and asked me, "Do you want to see him?" I shook my head. He nodded and instructed his assistant, "Let him leave." It was said that Julian waited downstairs at the company for a full 6 hours before he was finally escorted away by security. Serena somehow found out Reed's address and came in the rain. Without an umbrella, she stood outside the wrought iron gate, completely soaked, pitifully begging the security guard, "I just want to see my sister, just say a few words to her." I stood by the second-floor window, coldly watching her exquisite performance. Reed came up behind me at some point, his arm naturally around my waist. "Want me to send her away?" I was about to nod when Serena suddenly raised her voice towards the villa and cried out, "Sister, I know you hate me, but Mom and Dad are old and can't take this. Come back, I'll leave. I'll leave the Song family, okay?" Rainwater streamed down her hair and cheeks, mixed with tears, making her look disheveled and touching. Reed frowned slightly and dialed the internal line, his voice cold. "Have her escorted away, don't disturb the madam and child." When the security guard stepped forward to ask her to leave, Serena suddenly struggled, her voice sharp. "Maya, what are you so smug about? You're just someone who was abandoned." The rest of her words were cut off, probably stopped by the security guard. But her out-of-control appearance was seen by Julian and my parents, who had rushed over. They had obviously come to pick up Serena, but unexpectedly witnessed her most embarrassing side. My mother was still holding an umbrella in her hand, stunned in place. My father's face was ashen. Julian's gaze was fixed on the second-floor window, meeting my eyes across the distance. His eyes were full of disbelief. He saw me, and he saw Reed, who was intimately close behind me. Reed put his arm around my shoulders and led me away from the window. His voice was calm and even. "Just a clown, no need to pay attention." I pieced together what happened later from financial reports and Reed's occasional mentions. Reed thoroughly reorganized the internal affairs of the family with swift and decisive measures, firmly grasping the power in his hands. After gaining a firm foothold, he began the reckoning. First, the Song family. Reed cut off the funding chains of several of their important projects, and snatched away a cooperation they were certain to win. The Song Group stock price plummeted all the way, and within a month, it was already on the verge of collapse. Next was the Lee family. Reed used a major mistake Julian made in a cooperative project, ruthlessly withdrew investment, and demanded accountability. The Lee Group suffered heavy losses and was greatly weakened. I didn't care much about these ups and downs in the business world. I only knew that Reed was using the most direct way a man could, to get justice for me. 2 months after I got back my grandmother's inheritance, Reed proposed to me. There was no grand spectacle, only in the garden of our home. He knelt on one knee, holding a simply designed but dazzling diamond ring in his hand. He called my nickname, his eyes solemn and gentle. "Maya, give me a home, okay?" I looked at him, and then at the cooing child in my arms, and gave him my hand. The wedding was low-key and warm, inviting only a very few close friends. I wore a pure white wedding dress, took Reed's arm, and walked along the path covered with petals. The nanny held the child, who gurgled and laughed behind us. Not long after the wedding, the Song and Lee families finally couldn't hold on any longer. They sent messages through various channels wanting to meet Mrs. Reed. My father's message was sent to my old number, his tone unprecedentedly humble. "Maya, Dad was wrong, can we meet?" My mother even asked someone to pass on a message, saying she was sick and wanted to see her grandson very much. Julian tried to go through business partners, saying he hoped to offer his blessings in person. I looked at these messages, my heart completely unmoved. Reed took my phone, deleted the messages one by one, and said calmly, "They don't deserve to bother you." He shielded me from all disturbances, protecting me under his wings. The Song and Lee families ultimately failed to even meet me. It is said that my father waited bitterly outside the Chihua Group headquarters for several days, but eventually had to leave in despair. In late autumn, I pushed the stroller, walking with Reed in the private garden. Leaves were falling, and the child reached out to grab the whirling ginkgo leaves, laughing happily. Reed stopped and draped a shawl around my shoulders and the child. He lowered his head and kissed my forehead, then gently touched the child's soft face. "Are you cold?" I shook my head, leaning against his warm embrace, watching the child's rosy laughing face. In the distance, the mountains were dyed in layers of color, and the sunset was perfect. Those years of exile, those unattended wounds, eventually blossomed under the protection of this man. And what we lost was just an unworthy past. You see, you have to learn to love yourself.